Coming in at number 10, we have the Red Lady at the Fairmont Hotel. Let's kick off this list with a classic. Not just a classic in the home of Vancouver, but a classic in the home of the urban legend community. If you're a fan of urban legend videos, then you will hear almost every city on the planet has some sort of ghostly lady in a dress. Sometimes it's a red dress, sometimes it's a blue dress. It's actually often a white dress, but a ghostly attraction is really never complete without one. And the Fairmont Hotel in Vancouver is home to a famous lady in red. She has been seen walking through the hotel so often that you can go to the hotel bar and order a drink that is named after her. That's a good way to be remembered. Also, don't drink too many of those or you're gonna end up walking back to your room cross-eyed, and if you run into her you won't have the cognitive function to get away. But apparently this ghostly lady is actually very friendly. If you see her, she often is just strolling down the halls and won't do anything to trouble you. Maybe if you run into her you should extend your hand and ask her for a dance.
In our 9th spot we have the Red Room. Back in the 90s, this urban legend was terrifying innocent young souls all over Tokyo. So the legend is about a cursed pop-up that appears on a person's computer screen. Now, there are different versions of this legend. One states that the pop-up is an image of a door with a recorded voice that asks, "Do you like the Red Room?" Whereas other versions say that the pop-up is a red screen with creepy black writing on it. Now, you can try closing the pop-up, but even when you do, it will continue to appear on your screen. It's said that those who see the pop-up are later found dead, the walls of their room painted red with their own blood. What's creepy is that in 2005, a young girl murdered her classmate. Officials ended up finding that the Red Room was bookmarked on her computer. They believe that this pop-up is truly cursed and influenced her into committing the murder.
At number 8 we have the key. Now you'd think it'd take years of planning like the show Money Heist to pull off stealing something from the Tower of London, but it turns out it does not. Back in 2012, a man somehow breached the walls of the tower and stole the only set of spare keys to the tower from a sentry box used by the Yeoman Warders. Now, the Warders are the ceremonial guards of the tower and have locked it up every night without fail for the last 700 years. But somehow a man entered, and although he was caught trespassing and escorted off the premises, he still got the keys. So someone somewhere in the world has the only other set of keys to the Tower of London, and we have no idea who it is. But they're sitting on a lot of money, you know, the crown jewels, etc. Just saying, you can liquidate those assets.
Moving in at number 7, we're talking about the Chupacabra. His name literally means a goat sucker, and I think this is a real thing. This creepy animal is said to roam through Mexico, Southwest USA, and Puerto Rico. The Chupacabra is blamed for killing livestock and terrorizing people. They look like a hairless bear, and sometimes they can be seen with spikes on their backs. I just hope this guy doesn't get thirst for human blood, because if that was the case, we'd all be in a lot of trouble. I'd probably never leave my house, even though he's only an urban legend. I would still be afraid. I mean, just look at this thing. This is what nightmares are made of.
At number 6, we have the American Philosophical Society Library. Yo, these ghosts are haunting libraries? These ghosts are nerds, dude. Nerd ghosts. Well, there isn't a ton of ghosts flipping books in these libraries trying to build up their GPA, but there is one very famous ghost that has caught the attention of many people in Philly. Apparently the ghost of old Benjamin Franklin has been seen around this library, probably reading about electricity and realizing how dangerous his experiment was. Just checking out the basic laws of conduction and was like, oh yeah, I should have died way sooner. Rumor says that he usually walks around the building carrying a stack of books. If you ever see him, you should knock all the books out of his hand like a bully in the 80s.
In our 4th spot, we have the aliens. This next legend states that aliens are the key to time traveling. Back in the 1970s, a man came forward claiming that he was abducted by time-traveling aliens. These aliens took him back in time where he was able to visit dinosaurs. They also apparently took him to Mars and a few thousand years into the future. But he's not the only person to claim that aliens can time travel. Other people have come forward believing that extraterrestrials are so intelligent that they already figured out how to harness the power of time travel and use it to their advantage.
Filling at number 3 slot is the house on Skyview Street. This one comes from Estonia and follows the story of a house located on Skyview Street. The man who lived there was trash. Honestly, he wasted all of his money and honestly had no future, and on top of that he was heavily in debt. One night he thought enough was enough. Life didn't seem worth living anymore, and so he tried to commit suicide. Just as he was about to do it, a stranger broke into his room asking for one thing. Let the man get married on the top floor of his house, and if he agreed, he would be rich beyond his dreams. But there was one condition: no one could eavesdrop on this wedding. If they did, it would would cost the man his money and the eavesdropper their life. And did I mention the stranger was the devil himself? Sorry, I should have included that earlier, but you know, I like the build up. Anyway, the night of the wedding, the guests arrived, but you couldn't see them. You could hear them, but they were invisible, enjoying the festivities somewhere in the ether. The lights were on, the music was playing, the house was shaking like the weight of the guests was overloading it. As it became 1 AM, everything stopped. Everything was silent. The man was expecting his fortune, but as he was making his way upstairs, his butler got sick and died. He'd been eavesdropping on the wedding, and we knew what would happen if that happened, guys. We were forewarned. That room of the house that he died in is said to be walled up now, and the window facing the street is also boarded up. Never make a deal with the devil, people. It literally never ends well. Ever. Did I mention ever? Because it doesn't. How many videos of this do I have to make? No deal with the devil. Thank you.
Coming in at number 2, we have Riverview Hospital. Just outside of Vancouver in the city of Coquitlam is the somewhat famous Riverview Hospital. It got its claim to fame for being one of the places that the X-Files would film at. And I don't know if they intentionally selected a place that had something supernatural going on, if shooting an episode of the X-Files would just bring out something creepy, or if it's all just a coincidence, but the now shut down Riverview Hospital is considered one of the most haunted places in Canada. Running as a mental institution for years, even while it was open, there were stories of screams coming from empty rooms, entities crawling on walls, and a horrible stench that would engulf people and make them feel sick. Today the place is closed, but those who have something to say to the devil himself can make a trip in there and see what horrors await them.
And in our number 1 spot we have the Hemorrhoid Mansion. This mansion is considered one of the most haunted locations in all of Japan. In fact, the exact location of this mansion is widely unknown to the public, and that's a good thing. Legend goes that the owners of the house partook in something known as the strangling ritual. Basically, it's done to seal off evil or bad karma from within the earth. But the ritual didn't end up working and the family dishonored themselves. As a result, the man ended up killing himself and his family. Now it's said that their souls still wander around the mansion. They will apparently try to complete this ritual with whoever enters their abandoned house. In fact, it's said that 2 women were found dead on the property with rope burns on their wrists. Others who have entered the house reported seeing blood splashes on the wall, saw apparitions of a spirit dressed in all white, and were cut by some invisible blade. But that's not all. It's said that if you take a photo of a certain window in the home, a young girl can be seen when you develop the photos.
Starting us off at number 10 are the Ravens. Whilst doing my research, the legend of the Ravens was proclaimed the most infamous one, so I thought I'd just start with that one. Apparently, ravens live inside the walls of the tower, and as we know, ravens can symbolize death or bad luck. Legend has it that if the Tower of London ravens are lost or fly away, the crown will fall and Britain with it. It was actually taken so seriously that the tower employed a raven master whose sole job was to take care of them and make sure there were at least 6 ravens inside at all times. Can't be too sure, you know, those pesky rascals will just fly away. Now rumours have circulated that they have their wings clipped so they can't fly, and yes, the Raven Master does trim their feathers so they can still fly, but not super far. During World War II, most of the ravens in the tower were killed due to bombing raids, but 2 survived, Grip and Mabel. But Mabel flew away, and that depressed the hell out of Grip, who eventually flew away as well. The small incident was reported in the British newspapers, and soon after the story broke out, the decolonization of the British Empire started, which confirmed the legend to most people. Coming in at number 9 is the bear. Since the tower used to be a menagerie at one point, we know that countless exotic animals were kept within its walls. Apparently some of the animals still haunt the place, and for some reason that really doesn't surprise me. At this point, nothing really surprises me, if we're gonna be honest. Either way, guards at the tower have heard the roars of lions at night echoing around the tower. Some have seen the ghosts of horses galloping outside on the cobblestones with glowing red eyes, but the scariest one had to be the bear. In the 1800s, E.L. Swift shared that a sentry at Martin Tower was terrified by this huge bear-like figure that appeared from underneath the door. He shot his bayonet at it only for the bullet to go through the door and hit nothing at all. The bear was supposedly massive with his mouth fully agape and dripping with saliva. The ghost was salivating. Why is that so weird to me? The sentry literally dropped to the ground in fear and died 2 or 3 days later. Over time, people believe the bear was just the devil in disguise, which I kind of agree with. I don't remember the last time someone just died from seeing a ghost.
Coming in at number 9, we have the Night Chopper. Years ago, rumors started to float around about a guy who was patrolling the streets of downtown Vancouver. He would look for drunk people and offer them rides home. Some say he would also try and pick up prostitutes. The mysterious thing is, once these people were seen getting into the brown low-riding Cadillac, they would never be seen again. What would happen to them? What did the mysterious person who got the moniker the Night Chopper do with them? Some people suspect that this could have actually been the famous serial killer Willie Pickton, who would pick up prostitutes and then murder them and then feed their body parts to pigs. Who knows, this could have been an urban legend that was created as part of this insane person, or maybe the Night Chopper is a separate person altogether who still patrols the streets late at night looking for someone in need to take advantage of.
Let's head over to the Beast of Bladenboro over in North Carolina, and this brings us in at number 8. This terrifying creature looks like a panther, but he is a bloodthirsty killer who lurks in the darkness, and that's because he's looking for his next meal. He is known to attack dogs and even people, so watch your back if, yeah, we're not in North Carolina now, I don't have to worry here, but if you're in North Carolina, watch yourselves. People have claimed to see this beast say that he's about 3 feet long, 20 inches high, and has a long tail with a cat's face. Others say that his scream sounds like a woman being stabbed with a knife. According to the local reports, animals in the area have died mysteriously, and all of their blood was drained from their bodies. Some of them were mutilated, and some of them were even found with broken bones or completely flattened. So is this just an urban legend, or does the Beast of Bladenboro actually exist? I'm really hoping that he doesn't.
At number 7, we have the Philadelphia experiment. When it comes to war, you always want to have an edge. The person with the most advanced technology usually has the upper hand. The Philadelphia experiment was a demonstration of maybe the most advanced military tech we have ever heard about. It was back in 1943. The US Navy was running some experiments to try and make the ultimate stealth weapon, something that would not be detected by the enemy radar and could not be seen by the naked eye. And apparently it worked perfectly. The Navy was able to make the destroyer, the USS Eldridge, completely invisible. Word about this got out, and then everyone started freaking out, and then people started investigating it, and then it turned out that it was a hoax. But if I had just developed some sort of super top secret invisible boat, I would be like, yeah, I just made it up, don't worry about it. Like, it's not real at all, it's not the most advanced weapon in military history, just go to bed, don't even think about it.
Now at number 6 is the Enchanted Mora. Hailing from Portugal, the legend of the Enchanted Mora is very popular in local folklore there. Mora is an extremely beautiful and seductive shapeshifter that lives under an occult spell that was put on her against her will. She lives in places that represent boundaries like gates and doorways and can build with incredible strength. She usually shows up combing her hair and singing. Sometimes her hair is blonde, sometimes it's black, and if you promise to help set her free, she promises to give you treasure in return. These magical maidens were said to be the souls of the girls left behind to guard the treasure their partners hid before going to Mora Ma. They guard castles and rivers and are actually not evil. I know most female urban legend appearances are evil, but I mean, they're pretty okay. I don't want to confuse people, it isn't one person, there's many versions of this Enchanted Mora. There's many maidens. It's not just one, but they're all Mora. I'm gonna stop talking now. Coming in at number 5 is the Dancing Policeman. This urban legend may be one of the most well-known ghosts in all of Serbia. Back in the 60s, at the busiest intersection in Belgrade worked traffic policeman Jova Bull. Every day he wore a full white uniform. I'm talking white gloves, white hat, white everything. And his hand gestures were so elegant, it was almost artistic. It was like a dance. Watchers were left breathless. It was like he was conducting a ballet, not cars. His face and smile drew you in, and it's like he was everything you wanted no matter who you were. If you violated regulations, he'd just wag a finger, and he'd even blow kisses at people. He stole the hearts of so many he started appearing on TV and in the newspaper. The mayor of London even invited him to London after seeing him once, not even meeting him. He was less liked in London since his movements weren't as feminine as his counterparts, and the authorities also hated him. He didn't want to rise up, he just loved his job and wanted to keep at it. Even after being moved to a less busy intersection, he drew people in. In the end, the authorities had had enough of him and made him retire early, and he died as the keeper of a small parking lot. They say you can see his spirit hover in the Belgrade intersection and the London one like an invisible ballet dancer. Honestly, this is a ghost I'd actually like to see. He seems very unproblematic and not scary. And I like a good traffic controller. I like nice traffic. bad drivers are a no. At number 4 is the Petrine Fire. This urban legend is from the Czech Republic and it centers around Petrine Hill. Nowadays it's a lovely park and garden where you can go for a nice date or a romantic stroll, but being there at night is a lot more of a risk. Despite its reputation today, there used to be a pagan grove on the hill in the middle of a group of lime trees. In the middle of this grove was a huge sacrificial altar where it said the pagan priests used to burn young virgins for their gods. When Prince Boleslav came to power, he radically went after the pagans and their altar and grove were both destroyed and a church was built nearby instead. But the pagan faith was more resilient than that. It wasn't just gonna go away because this altar was destroyed. The pagan gods made themselves known on the hill by creating random fires that would magically contain themselves. But they weren't just fires. If people looked inside them, they would see the grimacing faces of all the pagans the prince had killed. And these fires are still happening till this day at night. They happen at random times and can last for around 20 minutes. If any of you subs are from Czech Republic and are watching this, can you let me know if you've seen these fires? I really need to know. Thank you.
The dog boy barks onto this list at number 4. This urban legend takes us all the way over to a small town in Arkansas. Apparently there is a 300-pound half-man, half-beast creature that has glowing red eyes who is known to bite at people's heels and chase them down the street. Sounds like someone needs to call the Humane Society. This urban legend originated from an even darker story. The dog boy was based off of a problem kid who used to enjoy torturing animals. Eventually he graduated from animals and he began to torture his own parents. He even locked them up in the basement where he can severely injure them on a daily basis. So that's how the dog boy urban legend came to be known, but this is actually a true story, which makes it 100% worse. Diving in at number 3, let's talk about Hell's Gate Bridge. A young couple was driving over this bridge, but they somehow managed to swerve their car off of the bridge. This happened during the nighttime and they ended up drowning. So now there are 2 legends associated with Hell's Gate Bridge. The first one is, if you drive your car in the middle of the bridge and turn off the lights, the couple will magically appear in the back seat and leave a wet spot. And the second urban legend states that if you drive over the bridge and you look over your shoulder halfway across, you will see a portal to hell engulfed in flames. So make sure you guys don't put your car in reverse because you might not be making it out there alive.
In our second spot, we have the Philadelphia experiment. This legend takes us back to the early 1940s. Apparently during this time, the government was conducting experiments on the USS Eldridge. They were attempting to make the ship invisible to the enemy radar. Witnesses claimed that they saw the ship surrounded by a greenish blue glow before it suddenly disappeared. The ship was then seen at a shipyard in Virginia before disappearing again and then reappearing back in Philadelphia. So the ship somehow teleported. On top of that, some even say that the vessel went back 10 seconds in time. Apparently when it reappeared, the crew on board fell ill. Some even went insane, whereas others were fused with the ship's metal. And in our number 1 spot, we have the fence legend. This has to be the most popular time travel urban legend out there. So legend goes that in the midsummer of the 1950s, a 30-year-old man by the name of Rudolph Fence appeared on the streets of New York City. He was dressed in fashion from the late 19th century and seemed very disoriented. Then out of nowhere, this man was hit and killed by a New York taxi. Upon investigating, his pockets contained a copper token for beer, a bill for the care of a horse, and a letter from 1876, among other unusual items. None of the objects showed signs of aging. Turns out that this man was a person who disappeared in 1876 at the age of 29. Some believe that this legend is actually true and that Rudolph Fence was a real time traveler.
Starting us off, in at number 10 we have the Alaska Triangle. The Alaska Triangle covers an area ranging from Juneau in the southeast to the northern Borough region all the way over to Anchorage. This is an area that apparently craves souls and more than 20,000 people have gone missing without a trace in this region. So what's the explanation for this? Some people believe that a mythical creature is roaming in this area and he likes to feast on human flesh, while others believe that this area causes you to become confused and disoriented, so you're not able to find your way home. The most famous disappearance was back in October 1972 when an airplane that was carrying some pretty important political leaders suddenly disappeared. This led to one of the largest manhunts in Alaska's history. It lasted 39 days and it involved 400 aircrafts, 12 US Coast Guard vessels as well. But nothing was ever found. Even to this day, this remains as one of the biggest mysteries in Alaska. And you know what? Note to self, never visit the Alaska Triangle, because it's just as scary as the Bermuda Triangle. Why is everything in triangles? Charman heats things up in at number 9. Charman has a pretty gruesome backstory. This urban legend is about a father and a son who were both caught in a house fire, and they suffered from horrible burns in 1948. After the fire, the son became so mentally unstable, which caused him to stab and hang his father to death. When the police finally found the son, he was so burnt that they weren't even able to tell if he was alive. So he was able to run away before they can arrest him for the brutal murder. Ever since that night, the chairman can still be seen wandering around the woods that surround Ojai, and that's located in California. Rumor has it that he will approach tents and torment campers. He will also attack anyone that goes in his way, and it's unclear on how many people he's actually killed. So be on the lookout if you are in Ojai, California for the chairman.
Coming in at number 8, we have the UBC Hitchhiker. UBC is one of the most famous, prestigious schools in all of Canada, and outside of being a great place to get an education and being close to the famous Wreck Beach, there's also the story of the UBC Hitchhiker. Apparently, along a road leading towards the school, you might see a young woman who's waiting on the side of the road with her thumb out. It seems that this young lady needs a ride and is stranded in the middle of the night. You would have to be a very cold soul to not pull over and pick her up. When you pull over, she will come over to the side of your car and she will tell you that she needs a ride to the UBC library. A little strange request for the middle of the night. She will have a short conversation with you in your car, and then right when you're close to the library, she will vanish into thin air. Some say this is just a story, while others claim that the UBC Hitchhiker has actually climbed into their passenger seat. Apparently, this is the ghost of a young girl who was hit by a car and killed while she was walking along the road at night. Coming in at number 7, we have the Old Spaghetti Factory Ghosts. The Old Spaghetti Factory is a nice little Vancouver tourist trap that has been in the city forever. Apparently, because of its long-standing history with the city, a few ghosts have decided to call this place home. Inside this restaurant sits an old decommissioned trolley car from the 1950s. Well, if you want to see a ghost, apparently the best thing to do is post up next to this trolley car, because several ghosts have been seen sitting in this trolley. It makes sense. It would be nice to see something familiar when you're a dead ghost. And it's not only sightings that give people the creeps in this restaurant. Apparently, ghosts are quick to learn your name and shout it out as you sit at your table, which might be kind of annoying. Like, dude, I'm trying to eat food over here. Just let me chill and enjoy my meal. You can spook me out later.
Now at number 6 is Anne Boleyn. So a bit of a history lesson for you. Anne Boleyn was King Henry VIII's second wife. This Henry was a fat ass one with 8 wives that he either kept divorcing or beheading. You know how men can be. Now fun fact, we actually did a performance of the Tudors and Henry VIII when I was in year 6, and I played Jane Seymour, his third wife, and the person he leaves Anne for. So I mean, I feel like everything just came full circle, you know what I mean? Honestly, it didn't. I just wanted to plug myself. Either way, by October 1533, Henry accused Anne of adultery with 5 courtiers, including her own brother, and treason for apparently conspiring with the men to kill him. None of it was true, but of course Henry was ready for his next wife, so he had to get rid of Anne somehow. She was sent to the Tower of London and decapitated in May of 1536 at age 35. Since she died in the Tower, it's literally a given that her ghost would roam the grounds. Like, this is no surprise to anyone. There have been countless sightings of her ghost, the most infamous story coming from a captain of the guard. One night he saw this light flickering inside the Chapel Royal, which was suspicious since it was locked. He tried to find the source of the light by climbing a ladder and saw inside the chapel an entire procession of ladies and knights dressed to the nines. The leader of the event was Anne Boleyn. Another sighting occurred in 1864 when the lieutenant confronted this white female figure. When he stuck his bayonet into the figure, he was horrified to see the weapon going through the figure instead of touching flesh. That's what a ghost is, Lieutenant. Study up. Coming in at number 5 is buried treasure. If X marks the spot, I'm ready with my shovel metal detector, my friends. I'm in need of some buried treasure, let me tell you. I've just done way too much online shopping and I'm broke. Anywho, so when Oliver Cromwell became Lord Protector of England back in 1653, he told the Tower's lieutenant Sir John Barkstead to hide 20,000 gold coins somewhere on the grounds. People have searched the premises and its every nook and cranny for the treasure, but all have failed. 15 19th century 20,000 gold coins. I wonder how much that is in pound sterling today or even Canadian dollars. I have an overdue England trip coming up anyway, so I mean, you guys will know where to find me. Lamau, there, with my metal detector. At number 4 are the Yeoman Warders, also known as beef eaters. Established in 1485, these people, as previously mentioned, are the ceremonial guards of the tower. Their job entails living on the premises, locking everything up every night, guarding the gates, as well as the royal prisoners. All warders are retired members of the armed services, and in order to get the job, you had to be a former warrant officer class 1 or 2, it doesn't matter, and they have to have served in the regular armed services for at least 22 years. As of 2018, there are 37 Yeoman Warders and 1 chief warder, and of course we cannot forget about the Raven Master. The Tower of London is actually a little village in and of itself. It has a pub, a church, a private doctor's surgery, and more, so most of the warders and their families live inside the fortress. On one hand, I feel like living at the tower could be very cool, but on the other hand, given how many people have died there and the ghosts that plague the grounds, I don't know if I'd want my kids just running around running into Anne Boleyn's headless ghost, you know? I think that's what you need years of intense therapy to get over as a child.
Moving on to number 3, we have the Koinew Visor. So the Koinew Visor is the name of a device that can apparently record footage from back in time. The device was invented in the 1950s by a team of Italian scientists. Apparently this machine can tune into times and places in the past and then get images or videos from that time period. In fact, they have released photos of the crucifixion of Jesus, which they claim the machine took. Now it's said that the device and footage is sealed away within the vaults of the Vatican. They fear that it will fall into the wrong hands who will use it for evil.
The Wendigo dropped onto our list at number 2. Well, he's a terrifying creature who has an irresistible hunger for human flesh. This beast has to consume human flesh in order to survive the cold winters in North America. And no matter how much flesh they eat, they will always be hungry for more. They supposedly measure in at about 15 feet tall, have glowing eyes, yellowish skin that looks like it's decaying. Legend has it that the Wendigos used to be humans, but they are formed whenever humans consume the flesh of another human being. So if you don't want to become a Wendigo yourselves, then you should probably take human flesh off of your menu. I think we should name the Wendigo to Hannibal Lecter. It's just fitting. Cropsey terrifies us in at number 1. If you live around Staten Island, then you probably recognize this name. Cropsey is rumored to be a homicidal lunatic who escaped from a mental institution. He apparently has a hook for a hand that he uses to hunt children and drag them back to an underground tunnel system. Parents used to tell their children that Cropsey is around the area, so they're better off staying close to home. Because for all they know, Cropsey could be anywhere and he could wait at any moment to claim his next victim. But then things took a turn for the worse when Cropsey became more than an urban legend. Children around Staten Island actually started to disappear for real, and that's because there was an actual homicidal madman who really did hunt children. His name was Andre Rand, and Staten Island was never the same since.
Starting off this countdown, we have the woman named Joan. Joan refers to a mysterious unidentified woman who claimed to be a time traveler. She came forward in the late 90s saying that she was from the future and needed help getting back home. She went on live TV but had her voice distorted and her face blurred. Joan claims that she was abandoned while on her mission. She has to keep her identity a secret, otherwise she claims she will be killed. Now, what's weird about this is that after her interview aired, her tapes were stolen from the broadcast company. Once the tapes were stolen, Joan was never heard from again. It was believed that her identity was leaked because the unedited interview revealed who she was. She may have been killed or went into hiding after this. In our 9th spot, we have the Outbreak. So this next legend is wild. Legend goes that our current outbreak situation is due to time travelers. That's right, you heard me. They believe that time travelers from the future who were immune to this disease came to our current time period and brought the deadly virus with them. Oh, told you this legend was wild. In our 8th spot, we have the Vacationers. In 1901, 2 English women took a vacation to France. They were doing typical tourist things and visited the Palace of Versailles. While there, they visited the Petit Trianon. Hopefully I said that right. Which was a little place that was gifted to Marie Antoinette as a private spot for her to hang out. So these women were having a fun day. They were exploring and embracing the French culture and also time traveling. Yeah. These women claimed that while at the spot, they time traveled. I don't think that was included in their itinerary. So while at the Petit Trianon, they claimed that they saw people wearing outdated clothing and they heard mysterious voices. Not only that, but they saw buildings and other structures that were no longer present and hadn't existed since the late 1700s. Lastly, they claimed that they saw Marie Antoinette herself drawing in her sketchbook. That's definitely one trip that they'll never forget.
Filling our number 7 slot is the Koinew Diamond. Can we just have a moment of silence for the fact I will never see a diamond of this size? Thank you. The tower houses the British crown jewels, and that includes the Koinew Diamond, aka the largest, most cursed diamond in the world. This 186 carat diamond had a curse that only affects men. Hindu descriptions of the diamond said, "He who owns this diamond will own the world, but will also know all its misfortunes. Only God or woman can wear it with impunity." The name is Persian for Mountain of Light, and it went through many hands in its time. Shah Jahan, the emperor who commissioned the Taj Mahal, had it, but his reign ended with his 4 sons torturing and killing each other. Apparently it was initially close to 800 carats, but a Venetian gem cutter reduced it to 186. 800 carats? What does that even look like? Well, that's huge. Sorry, I just imagined. It was in the hands of many local rulers, almost all of which met with bloody deaths. Finally, in 1849, a treaty was signed and the stone was given to Queen Victoria. But the story doesn't end there. On its journey to England, there was an outbreak of cholera on board, so locals in Mauritius threatened the crew and told them to leave the port or they'd attack. A storm then occurred lasting 12 hours, and then finally, it somehow made it to the royals. As a result of the curse, no male heir has ever worn it, and you'd probably keep it that way. It's for the best.
Coming in at number 6, we have Sasquatch. Vancouver is surrounded by a massive wooded area. There is so much forest there that you can get lost and never be found. So it should be no surprise that there have been plenty of Sasquatch sightings. The big hairy ape man has been spotted enough to have Bigfoot hunters go through the hills of British Columbia every year to try and find the creature for themselves. Tracks have been spotted, hair has been found, and apparently some people have even been attacked by a massive hairy creature, which was probably a bear. Coming in at number 5, we have rabid beavers. This is probably the most Canadian urban legend I have ever heard of in my life, but apparently next to the waters in Vancouver or in some rivers and streams in wooded areas, there were reports of rabid beavers, big toothed mammals that would chase you down and chomp through your legs like it was a fresh log. I don't really think this one is true. I've never heard about this ever before in my life, but apparently the internet claims this one is true. I've never experienced this for myself, and I'm pretty sure that this point is just internet trolls trying to have a good laugh, but the idea of this brought a smile to my face. Just people running from some beavers, the idea of a horror movie centered around beavers, that all sounds so great to me. Also, if you run into a beaver, you should keep your distance. They can be very aggressive. That's a little Canadian tip for you. Coming in at number 4, we have the Pink Pearl. There is a famous restaurant in Vancouver called the Pink Pearl. From the outside, this place looks like a cement brick, but there are always some of the most expensive cars parked in the parking lot. Apparently this place is one of the best kept secrets in Vancouver, as it is one of the nicest Asian restaurants in the whole city, but is also a gang meeting place. Some of the biggest, most powerful triads from all over Vancouver come and meet and strike deals in this place without anyone knowing.
In our third spot, we have Tomino's Hell. Tomino's Hell is the name of a poem written by Sayo Yaso, and it's apparently cursed. Legend goes that whoever reads this poem out loud will suffer from misfortune or even death. Consequences range from feeling sick, to injuring yourself, to death. Some interpret that the poem is about a young boy who descends into the 8 levels of hell after killing his parents. Whereas others believe it's about a man that goes into war and ends up dying, never being able to see his family again. Either way, it's said that you should never, and I mean never, read this poem out loud. The curse is so strong that some people who have read the poem in their head have even felt it ill while doing so. And I mean, I refuse to even look at the poem, let alone recite it. Moving on at number 2, we have hanakosan. Hanakosan is basically the Japanese version of Bloody Mary, but in my opinion, this one is way more terrifying. Hanakosan is a young girl who haunts school bathrooms. She's described as having short dark hair and is seen wearing a red skirt or dress. To summon her, it's said that you must enter a girl's bathroom in your school, knock 3 times on the 3rd stall door, and ask if Hanako-san is there. If she is, she will speak to you. The door will then slowly open and you'll be able to see her ghostly figure covered in blood before she drags you down the toilet, which leads to hell. Now, this legend is pretty popular in all of Japan, not just Tokyo. In fact, it's said that tons of young girls try to summon hanakosan at school.
And finally, at number 1 is polignitia. Hailing from Slovakia but appearing in a lot of Slavic folklore, polignitia is the noon demon, also known as Lady Midday or the Noon Witch. She mostly appears during the summer as a beautiful young woman in white, or an old hag, or even a 12-year-old girl who roams fields in the countryside. She takes the form of dust clouds and then appears literally out of nowhere and is always carrying a pair of shears or a scythe. She'll trick workers on the field by asking them a hard question, and if they answer it wrong, which most of them do, she'll quickly just change the subject and then behead them. Literally savage. She either beheads you, or if she's having a good day, she'll just give you a terminal illness. I don't know which one is better, to be fair. Neither really. One's a sudden death and the other is a slow burner. I don't know which one I'd choose. Which one would you choose? Probably the beheading, I feel. But then, I'd have more time with it. Either way, let me know in the comments. She's known as a personification of getting sunstroke, and her presence has been linked to causing heat stroke in many people now. She causes aches in their neck, and if it's bad, one can even go mad. Starting us off at number 10 are Lytuvins. This urban legend is from Latvian folklore, and Lytuvins are said to be the souls of a killed person. Meaning, if you were murdered, hanged, drowned, you could be one of these Lytuvins. These souls are cursed to remain on Earth as long as their fate permits them to, and in some parts of Latvia they believe they're the souls of unbaptized children, so it really depends on the version you grew up with. They're meant to be extremely dangerous, and I'm not surprised. I mean, if I was stuck on Earth for centuries when I didn't want to be, I'd start causing shit as well. I think anyone would. They've been known to attack domestic animals and humans, and a common method for them is sleep paralysis. They strangle us in our sleep, but you can escape the attack if you move the toe on your left foot. Oddly specific, but facts are facts, guys. You'd think you'd be safe if you just locked the doors before bed, but wrong again. They can fit through keyholes and slits under doors, so you're out of luck there as well. Looks wise, they appear as labored, small but fast children. Very rarely do they look like ugly witch-like women, but they can. The deaths they cause are painful, you guys, and I kid you not. The victim loses all their strength, they get super tired, they're basically drowning in sweat, and they can't move since the Lytuvin is lying on top of them, and with that you slowly lose the ability to breathe, bit by bit, until your heart stops beating. Coming in at number 9 is the Lake Somin monster. Located in Lake Somin in the village of Lytuvin in Ukraine, this monster is meant to be 30 feet long with the body of a crocodile and the head of a snake. He makes this deep wheezing, groaning sound that vibrates throughout the whole lake, and he lives deep within the underwater caves. He lies waiting for his victims at night and dusk, and comes out of the lake to drag his victims to their deaths. They can eat horses, humans, sheep, cats, dogs, anything. The first story about the monster was before World War I, where a village leader refused to pay his fishing taxes because he thought there was a strange serpent in the lake. Everyone was terrified, and an expedition was even launched but was called off when the war started. Stories arose again during World War II of a crocodile-like beast, and another expedition began, but no creature was ever found. At number 8 we have the Gnome King Kirai. According to this Dutch urban legend, Kirai was the king of all the gnomes that live in North Brabant in the Netherlands. From their base they travelled quite a bit, and legend has it King Kirai lived on Gnome Mountain, ironically also known as Devil's Mountain. I was gonna try saying it in the actual Dutch word, but I knew I would just completely bottle it, so I just didn't even bother. The gnomes weren't evil, surprisingly. They would help farmers in their homes as well as people in other villages. They hated being seen, so would only travel at night, but if you were unfortunate enough to see a gnome, they'd have you for it. One farmer who apparently saw them was made blind in one eye just for glancing at them. The king ended up being shot by a hunter in the 1950s, and a statue of him was actually erected in the village they lived in called Hoglone. I know I said that wrong, but I really tried.
Moving on to number 7, we have the Chrononauts. In 2011, two men by the name of Andrew Basiego and William Sillings stepped forward claiming that they were former time travelers. They claimed that they worked for a project called Project Pegasus. Apparently through this program, they were picked to go to Mars and did so by teleportation. Then they also claimed that they went back in time and met Barack Obama, who was 19 at the time. Apparently Barack was also chosen to go to Mars. However, Obama has denied any of these claims, so guess he's not a time traveler. Making our way down the list at number 6, we have the Shock. So this next urban legend is meant as a warning for anyone who is interested in time travel. The legend states that time travel is deadly. It can cause memory loss, cognitive decline, and completely rearrange your genetic makeup. If you constantly jump from the past to the future to the present, then your body will start to become overwhelmed. Every time you time travel, they believe that the cells in your body are being manipulated and rearranged. As a result, you may age at an incredible rate. The legend also states that if time travel is done improperly, then it can cause you to become disfigured. You may be teleported back in time, but you might lose a limb or your body parts might get fused together. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with John Titor. This is another extremely famous urban legend. So John Titor is a supposed time traveler from the year 2036 on a military mission. He first made his appearance on the internet in the 2000s on online forums. He would post about predictions or stories from the future. The reason for him traveling back in time is so that he can get an IBM 5100. Which apparently had a secret function that could translate anything to any language. He also claimed that the company was keeping it hidden for the fear of their competition finding out about it. On the forums, John also posted grainy photos of the time machine and of the military logo from the future. In 2001, Titor disappeared from online and was never heard from again. Then in 2004, the company IBM came forward and said that Titor was right and that their computer did have that secret function that he mentioned. So people believe that he is a real time traveler.
At number 4, we have the Christchurch Burial Ground. We got a double feature going on here. Now this is one of the most famous burial grounds in America, and why is that? Well, because one of the most famous men to come out of Philly is buried there, Rocky. I'm just kidding, Rocky's not a real person, we all know that. I'm actually talking about Benjamin Franklin, haha, these jokes suck. Well, apparently this dude haunts this place too. I guess if you're a founding father, you can haunt the whole city if you want to. Most ghosts are locked down to like a house or a basement, but this dude can float all over Philadelphia if he wants to. That means there's still status in the afterlife. So if you weren't cool in this life, you're not gonna be cool in the next. I'm sorry, I'm breaking it down. The legends about the hauntings at the Christchurch Burial Ground are that Benjamin Franklin will steal the change out of your pockets and then throw it at you. People have gone in missing quarters and have had pennies flung at their head out of nowhere, which is super rude coming from a guy like that. Back in his time, you could buy a house for like 11 bucks, so he should have a better value for pocket change. At number 3, we have the Cruiser Olympia. Ghost boat. You know things are going down when you put some ghosts on a boat. Someone get Samuel Jackson on the phone because I got a movie. Ghosts on a Boat. This is gonna be a good movie. Snakes on a Plane was so good. It was so good. This boat has some big ghost energy all day, every day, and for good reason. This thing used to be out in battle, so there are a few people who have lost their lives on board. There are even rumors that there was a murder-suicide on board. Ooh, that kind of stuff always gets the spirits going. If you're a fan of checking out ghost stuff, then you would be happy to find out that this boat does regular ghost tours during spooky season, and by spooky season I obviously mean October. People who go on these tours have felt the presence of an angry ghost, and some have even passed out from the stress. At number 2, we have the Demonic Inmate. The Eastern State Penitentiary is considered one of the most haunted and horrible places in the whole city. With a history of violence, torture, and horrible living conditions, it has created an aura of bad vibes that evil ghosts just love living in. You can go on ghost tours there, and if you do, you might come across the Demonic Inmate. It's said that there's a soul living in there that is much darker than the rest. It carries with it an evil energy that is impossible to ignore. Some people say when it gets close they feel sick or even vomit. People who see him say he looks horrible and he haunts their dreams for weeks later. So I don't know how high your tolerance is for ghosts, but you definitely need a high one to go on this ghost tour.
And finally, at number 1 are the Two Princes. In the early 1220s, that sounds really weird, but I'm just gonna go with it, King Henry VIII expanded the main castle by adding the bloody tower, even though at the time it was called the Garden Tower. Flash forward 200 something years, we have King Edward IV. When he died, his two sons Edward V and Richard, Duke of York, were sent to live in the Tower of London because their uncle Richard III III was gonna look after them. He then snaked everyone by taking the throne for himself, and the boys literally vanished in 1483. Now, there are many legends surrounding what happened to the boys. Most just claim the boys got murdered in the tower, and I'd agree. In 1674, some workmen were destroying a staircase in the White Tower. They ended up finding the bones of 2 children underneath. They were believed to be the 2 princes, and the bones were transferred to Westminster Abbey. By 1933, the bones were exhumed, and tests indicated they belonged to kids the same age as the princes. Regardless, it's said that the 2 boys haunt the bloody tower. Back in the 15th century, 2 guards saw the shadows of 2 small figures just running down the stairs. They were holding hands and wearing white nightshirts. You guys have heard me say this so many times before, I just hate ghost kids. Kid ghost, not a thing for me.
Starting off this countdown, we have the Dorio do ruins. I apologize in advance if I say any of these names wrong. So I kind of want to visit Tokyo just to do some ghost hunting. Who's with me? Because there are tons of haunted locations there. In the center of the Otsukayama Park, you will find the ruins of the Dorio-do Temple, which apparently translates to the end of the road temple, which is quite fitting since 2 murders have taken place there. Now, it's said that you can hear the voices of the victims crying for help in the dark. Now, here's the thing. It's thought that another murder might have happened there that we just haven't discovered yet. Legend goes that the voice you hear is actually the victim trying to guide you into finding their own dead bones so that they can receive some closure and finally rest in peace.
Filling our number 7 slot is Peikko. This urban legend comes from Finland, and I'm so happy to include this one because I've literally seen so many comments asking for Finnish urban legends, so at least I can semi-make it happen for you guys. And I don't know if I saw a lot of comments or just the same users commenting the same thing. But anyway, Peikko is said to be a massive creature similar to a giant who can turn invisible at will, change size at will, sleep in the form of a rocky landform for hundreds of years, and worst of all, he's been known to make holes in children's teeth. Since every country has their own version of the boogeyman, the Peikko is Finland's inspired version of it. He kidnaps children, and do we really need to go into what he does with them? Like, I think we all know. Let's just skip the atrocities. We don't have to talk about that. We don't. I don't need to imagine that. Neither do you.
Making our way down the list at number 8, we have Yoki Onna. Yuki Onna is a young, beautiful woman who uses her looks to lure men to their death. She's considered a snow woman. She appears on snowy nights as a tall woman with long black hair and blue lips. Her pale skin lets her blend in with her snowy surroundings. One version of the legend states that Yuki Onna appears to travelers trapped in snowstorms. She will then kill the travelers with her icy breath, leaving them as a frost-coated corpse. Whereas another version says that she will lead the travelers astray and let them die of exposure. But that's not all. If Yuki Onna feels like being even more cruel, then she will feast on them and drain her victims of their blood.
The creepy clown statue scares us in at number 6. Not everyone loves clowns. Actually, a lot of people are deathly terrified of them, and this urban legend is no exception. This story actually originated from a chain letter that was being circulated in 2006, and the story goes like this. One night a couple went out to dinner and called the babysitter to watch their kids. When the babysitter arrived, the kids were already fast asleep in their beds, so she just hung out downstairs for a couple of hours until the parents called. She said that the kids are fine, but would it be alright if she put a blanket on a clown statue that was in the room because it made her nervous. The phone went silent for a moment and the mom replied with, "We don't have a clown statue. Grab the kids and get out of there as fast as you can." And at the bottom of the chain letter it says, "If you don't repost this letter to 10 people within the next 5 minutes, the clown will be standing next to your bed at 3 a.m. and he's gonna be there with a knife." I mean, I've already passed this letter on to you guys, so now it's your turn to pass it on to 10 more people. Riverdale Road drives onto this list at number 5. This creepy road is located near Thornton, Colorado, and it is full of horrifying urban legends. From a ghost who attacks parked cars, crazy demons, and a phantom car, this road has it all. But probably the most terrifying story about Riverdale Road has to be about the gates of hell. If you're brave enough to drive along this road, you will see some pretty rusty gates, but legends has it that these gates are actually a portal to hell. It's no wonder why so much demonic activity is reported here. But the fun doesn't stop there. You'll also see a bloody handprint suddenly appear on road signs. You can see ghosts hanging from trees, and if you're unlucky, you might even see some shapeshifters who are out there to kill you.
Filling our number 3 slot is the armor. So one of the tower's most popular exhibits is King Henry VIII's old armor, and I don't know if it's the most popular because it was Henry's or because it's possessed by an evil-ass ghost. Probably the latter. Either way, over the years, several different people have described this feeling of complete dread going through their bodies as soon as they enter the chamber being where the armor is kept. One guard claimed he felt like he was being crushed alive as soon as he stepped inside. Others have said it feels like a demon has just come out of nowhere and is trying to suffocate you. Some have described it as this invisible monster trying to strangle them to the point they could feel this grip around their neck and legitimately could not breathe until they left the room. One guard shared that he was assaulted by a ghost that wrapped his cloak around his neck and tried to strangle him. He escaped from the chamber, but there were red marks all over his neck, meaning that was real. Now at number 2 is Traitors Gate. This is the tower's most famous entrance and was constructed way back during the reign of Edward I. When the arch was first built, it was brilliant. Workers were pleased, Edward was pleased, but when they came back to it the next day, they found the arch completely collapsed. Furious, the king ordered them to build it once again, and they did, but again, the archway somehow collapsed. You think it was an issue in the construction or foundation, but locals reported seeing the ghost of Thomas Becket. He was murdered in Canterbury a century prior, and people saw him still in his bishop's regalia, removing one brick from the arch at a time. This man has patience, I'll give him that. One brick at a time? How much time do you have? I mean, he's in purgatory, so I mean, all the time in the world, I guess. Either way, when King Edward was told the news, he ordered his men to build the arch again, but this time he renamed it to St. Thomas's Gate, and surprisingly, it was still standing the next day.
And coming in at the number 1 spot is the Foot Bandit. So here's something very creepy that I remember from when I was a kid. So for whatever reason, along a river in Vancouver, human feet started popping up. Like, excuse me, what? What, like, was there a cemetery close to the river and feet were just falling into it? Was there a bunch of bodies that were found that belonged to the feet? Was it always both feet that were found? Well, no, no, and no. Some of the bodies that belonged to these feet were discovered, but many of them weren't. Also, they never tracked down who was responsible for throwing these feet into the river. So it was suspected that some sort of bandit was out there that was killing people and cutting off their feet. The reason that only one foot would ever show up was possibly because he or she would keep the foot as a trophy. I don't even know why I said she, it's almost always a dude.
In our 7th spot, we have the Zoshigaya Cemetery. Zoshigaya is one of the largest and most haunted cemeteries in Tokyo. In fact, people are very reluctant to visit the cemetery because of how haunted it is. On top of that, legend goes that 3 people have committed suicide at this place. It's thought that something at the cemetery forces them to do so. On top of that, it's said that the ghosts of these individuals still lurk around the cemetery. If you go there, chances are you will run into one of these ghosts. Some have heard voices whispering in their ears, while others have seen faces and white hands appear from behind trees. Coming in at number 6, we have the Poisoned Ghost. This next urban legend is about a woman named Oiwa who was poisoned by her husband. Her ghost is now back and seeking revenge. So apparently Oiwa was a beautiful woman who fell in love with a poor man named Lemon. They eventually got pregnant and got married. But Lemon fell in love with a rich woman named Umi, so he ended up poisoning Oiwa and then pushing her off a cliff, all so that he could be with Umi. A different version is that Oiwa killed herself after becoming disfigured from a poisoned face cream. Either way, the legends end the same way. Oiwa causes Lemon to hallucinate and kill his wife and others around him before killing himself. Now, this legend is super popular. In fact, it has been adapted a number of times. But the story is said to be cursed. Actresses who portray Oiwa on stage have become ill or have injured themselves. So it's thought that she will haunt anyone who talks about her tragic story. It's great, I literally just talked about it, so if I become cursed, you know what happened. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the breakup. So if you and your partner are on a nice romantic vacation in Tokyo, the one place you should not go to is Inokashira Park. Legend goes that if a couple goes on a boat ride together in this park, then they will immediately break up. So, enshrined near the pond is a statue of Benton, the goddess of femininity, water, and beauty. Story goes that Benton becomes jealous of any couple out on the pond together and will force the two to split up with each other. Apparently, this has happened to a bunch of lovers. They set off madly in love, but when they arrive back shortly after, they are disgusted with each other. So maybe just skip this part of Tokyo for now. Or, I mean, go there if you want an easy way to end your relationship, you know, either or. In our 4th spot, we have Sunshine 60, otherwise known as Tokyo's haunted skyscraper. From 1978 to 1991, it was considered the largest building in Japan, and it may just be one of the most haunted ones too. So according to this legend, this building was built on land which used to be home to Japan's most infamous prison, Sugamo Prison. This prison was home to an abundance of criminals. It is also the place where an execution of 7 Japanese war criminals occurred. Now it's said that these executed criminals haunt the building. Some have seen fireballs floating in the air. Others have seen ghostly apparitions or have heard cries for help.
Coming in at number 3, we have the Vogue Theatre Ghosts. This is one of the most popular spots in Vancouver if you wanted to see a live show. Of course, Corona happened and I no longer know the state of this place, but there must be a few ghosts in there that are feeling pretty lonely. One of the hidden features of the Vogue Theatre are a couple of ghosts that love to pull pranks on guests. They must be sitting around now waiting for people to show up. There was one ghost that would like to sit next to people dressed in a full tux and then disappear. Yeah, that's the kind of shock you want right before you see a live performance. Great, now I get to watch this whole Kill a Mike concert with piss in my pants. Another ghost wouldn't only stick to freaking out guests, but he would venture into the dressing area and create loud noises to freak out the performers. That's one way to get you alert and ready to perform. At number 5, we have the Betsy Ross House. This isn't just one of the most important historical landmarks in America, but it's also one of the most haunted places in the entire country. The strange thing is, it's haunted by the ghost of Philip Seymour Hoffman, who's studying for a role. I'm just kidding, it's obviously haunted by Betsy Ross. I mean, who else would be there? It's her house. Just because you're dead doesn't mean you have to give up the deed to your home. You know how long it takes to pay off a mortgage? She's probably like, I'm gonna stay here for the afterlife and the afterlife after that. Well, even though Betsy Ross should be pumped that she has a house to live in for the rest of time, she is actually very, very sad. While she was alive, she had to watch most of her kids and 2 separate husbands bite the dust before she did. This weighed heavy on her heart and her ghost is still mourning. Some people who walk into the basement have seen her ghost kneeling on the floor, weeping. She still misses them even in the afterlife. Oh, that's so sad. Everyone watch and call your loved ones and tell them that you love them or you're gonna end up a sad ghost.
Now at number 2 is the pastor's wife. This legend is pretty tragic, I'm not gonna lie, and it hails all the way from Denmark. Way back when, a woman married a pastor, but she was hiding a massive secret. Under no circumstances ever did she ever want kids, so much so, she found a witch who told her she was gonna have 7 kids in the future. The witch gave her 7 stones to throw into a well, and that would prevent all the pregnancies. She did it and resumed normal life. Her and the pastor went for a walk one night, and he realized his wife didn't have a shadow. Everyone has a shadow, why the hell doesn't she? He realized she must have done something horrifically evil for this to happen and tried getting her to confess to him, but she refused. He kicked her out of their house and forced every villager to refuse her. He cursed her by saying it's more likely a red rose would grow out of his stone dining room table than for her to redeem herself. Harsh words. Absolutely crushed, the woman left the village and found a priest in another village nearby. He said to redeem herself she had to stay in the church overnight with a book he had given her, and that she can't give the book to anyone no matter what because many will be asking for it. And he was right. That night she was haunted and spat on by all the kids she would have had. They verbally abused her for being so selfish, but she got through it and the next day she was redeemed. But the priest said the only catch now is that you only have 1 day to live. She rushed back to her village hoping to see her husband one last time, but again no one let her in except one kind soul. She died behind an oven in that person's house, and the next day the pastor was heart attack level shocked when he saw a red rose coming out of his stone table. Overcome with heartache, he searched for his wife everywhere, and when he found out she was dead, he went mad and died soon after. I have no words. It hurts me. It hurts me here.
And for the number 1 spot, we have the Charred Bride. That sounds pretty brutal. This takes place at the City Tavern, and guess what? This place has more ghosts in it, of course. There are 2 main ghost legends about this place. The first being that of a dead waiter who still shows up for work, and some guests have said they've even been served by him. And listen to me, I used to work in service, this guy's in hell. Being a waiter for your entire life after you die, that is hell. That's hell. He's in hell. The other ghost has an even more depressing story than being a waiter forever. The building was often used for weddings, and back in 1854 the whole place caught fire and was destroyed while a wedding was happening. This killed a lot of the guests along with the bride. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, if you want a place to become haunted, you just need to kill a bride on her wedding day. She turns into a ghost like that. Since then, the city tavern has been rebuilt and is still used for weddings. Talk about some bad mojo. Now when people have their weddings there, some see a ghostly charred bride standing in the wedding party. Like, get your own wedding. Jeez, you're gross.